Okay, so this is going to be about a controversial topic that should not be controversial at all. Um, the first time that I heard of Caucasian or white people outside of Europe and West Asia was in a Japanese class about the people living in Hokkaido, Japan. Um, the Ainu, and the teacher, who was Japanese and very, uh, I guess you'd say, stereotypical Japanese looking, said that the main island of Japan was populated mostly by the people who are now a minority in Hokkaido, Japan, and then it was the Okinawan people from that island that gradually took over the island and conquered it or ethnically cleansed it, genocided it. These are all modern words. I mean, the same thing happened with the Anglo-Saxons and Jutes to the Romano-Celts in southern Britain. That's how we get England from, right? Um, and of course, similar thing happened in Canada and the United States, right? But there's still a group of people um, in Hokkaido, Japan, that have these Caucasian features that are now mixed with what you would consider Japanese or East Asian characteristics. But photographs going back 100 years show samurai and working people and all this stuff, you know, in typical Japanese garb, but they look like they're, you know, it's like one of those old timey photos that you get at a fair where you dress up as like somebody from the old west. It looks like that with people from like Central Europe, right? And there's a weird type of racism, I guess, it's going on that both the white supremacists and the anti-white people, the SJWs, I guess you'd call them, attach onto this and attach all these political things. Now, I remember this anarchist that I worked with at Whole Foods said, well, wherever the Native Americans came from, we definitely know they didn't come from Europe. And I thought, well, what a bullshit thing to say. And this is before I knew anything about solutreans or whatever you want to call them. Um, and the Clovis people were probably of Caucasoid appearance, if they're coming over from parts of the world that they say they're from, you know, Central Siberia and whatnot. And I always believed that there was multiple groups of people that came to the Americas. You know, whether it was the the amazing sailing abilities of the Samoan people, um, or Pacific Islander, if you'd like, and the Bering Sea isn't that wide, so it would be easy for people from North Korea and places like that, or the Korean Peninsula, parts of Japan, to just come over. I mean, they were sailors. But there's also a very distinctive look to Central Americans, right? I mean, they don't look white or black or Asian. They have that distinctive Aztec look. But the first time I heard of a different people group was of the Aboriginal Australians actually establishing, or people who are related to the Aboriginal Australians sailing over and setting up a community in northern Argentina about 15,000 years ago. It's about 5,000 years before Clovis. And they met their end at the spear points of what get deemed the Asiatic people. Now, I recently found out about the Chachapoya, and they were for lack of a better term, white or Western European looking people that the Incas had talked about, and so did the Spanish talked about them. And we have some of their mummies, and you can, from the skull of somebody, you can tell whether they were, Bantu Black African or Western European or, South Indo-Chinese. And just even looking at the mummies of the Chachapoya, the red beards and the blonde straight hair, it's kind of wavy. That's not indigenous to the Inca or, the Maya or the Aztec. And then there were photos of Native Americans, and some of these Native American tribes looked, and these were photos from, the 1870s, 1880s, they were predominantly white or whatever. And you'll see on the internet there's the, white supremacist websites that spin it one way, and then there's the BuzzFeed, Vox type websites that try to spin it another way. And, oh, these people are from Asia. Well, it doesn't matter. There were white Caucasian people in Asia. That most of the European peoples that are in Europe today or have been in Europe for the last 1,000 years came out of Asia. The only indigenous people would be the Basques, and then possibly the Celts and the Latins and the Greeks, but the Slavs and the Germanic peoples, they came in from Asia, and the evidence is pretty clear for the Solutreans that came over, because there was no open ice corridor. There was an ice sheet that was like 1,000 miles long, and the people who came here from Asia had to do so by boat. Not very hard to do. Just as easy as coming over from Spain, Portugal, and France, which is where we get the term Solutrean from. So the evidence for the Solutreans is the napping techniques, of shaping tools, the DNA markers of over 8,000 skeletons. When you hear there's no DNA, that's BS. I don't know where there is DNA. The ice flow data and the cultural data. And the Solutreans arrived between 25,000 years ago and 20,000 years ago. And there's finds such as the Kennewick Man and the Windover Bog people. And I can go on about this. But there's Native American groups, quote unquote Native American groups, that try to suppress this and say, well, those are our ancestors. Well, very few of the Native Americans, the land that they live on, is not their ancestral homeland. You know, Oklahoma is not the ancestral homeland of the Potawatomi. Illinois is. Oklahoma is not the ancestral homeland of the Cherokee and the Chickasaw. It's North Carolina and Florida. Well, Florida in the case of the Seminole. And the Apache, which are from, you know, the New Mexico, Arizona region, were relocated to Florida. So, I mean, very few groups actually maintained their ancestral homeland. And even then, before Columbus got here, they were, I say Columbus, but before that initial contact, you know, and then you had the Spanish, the Portuguese, Dutch, the French, the English. You had Sioux taking Comanche land, Comanche taking, you know, Paiute land, and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, just because, oh, well, you're in possession of the land when we got here, didn't mean that they own that land from eternity. They had just taken it from another tribe. The noble savage idea is very patronizing, and it treats, you know, people like children. You know, it treats, you know, the multiple races that make up the Native American, all the way from the Inuit in the north to the very southern peoples of South America, almost as children. You know, not capable of the same vices and virtues that a Western European is susceptible to. But instead of First Peoples, these tribes that try to claim, oh, this was our land forever until the quote-unquote white man took it. And not everybody's an immigrant, right? There's settlers, colonizers, and then there's immigrants, right? But Clovis, they try to say that's the Asiatic people. They came over 10,000 years ago. But the Solutreans and Kennewick Man, as well as the Windover Bog people, predate them by thousands of years, if not 10,000 years or more. There's a fake story that said that they went back and got the bones of Kennewick Man, and they made, you know, they did a DNA test on him, and no, that's not true. They did make, the guy did have the foresight, the archaeologist did have the foresight to make a computer model, and I believe a physical model of the skull. And we can reconstruct faces with just the skull. Police use this in forensics all the time. And this man was Caucasian that died in, you know, that died on the North American continent between, you know, thousands of years ago, 9,000 to 25,000 years ago, right? I didn't have the date down. But the Windover Bog people, these people have, if I do this correctly, I can show you the the orange beard and the orange hair of the man and his facial features, as well as, you know, the accounts of the Chachapoya, and the routes that the Solutreans would take. Now, I would think this would overjoy the people who identify with the Cherokee and the Potawatomi, because it's more to their culture. It's a bigger tapestry of people. But I think in the last 25 years, we've become more racially divided, and it's because of this stupid SJW politics crap. All right, peace to you.